In today's show, Joe Cronin reveals his plan for the offseason at Blazers exit interviews. And we got a play-in preview with the Clippers and the Timberwolves playing the most important game of the Blazers season to date. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. In today's show, the Blazers held exit interviews, or what passes as exit interviews in this day and age, on Monday. Back at the Rose Garden, Joe Cronin sort of revealed, or at least gave the larger shapes of what the Blazers offseason plan will be. Revealed at least enough that we kind of know the direction. We'll talk about that from Cronin, and then we'll close the show, talk and play in the 7-8 game to determine who's the 7th seed, and more importantly, who would play on Friday in the winner in the second game of the play-in leg. That might determine the Blazers' future. We will look at all things Clippers T-Wolves to close the show. But let's start with Joe Cronin. The Blazers held exit interviews today at the Moda Center. 4 people talked. It wasn't always like this. It was Chauncey Billups, Joe Cronin. You're always going to get the coach and the GM. And then it was Josh Hart and Anfernee Simons. Dame just didn't want to do it. That's the easiest read on this. Dame just didn't want to do it. And respect to him, I guess he doesn't have to. But Nurk and Dame would have been not more, but certainly interesting to hear from. You want to hear from the sort of principal characters. And I would say Josh Hart and Anfernee Simons are sort of secondary characters. Ant is going to be a principal character here in the future. But listen, if you're going to the offseason, you want to hear from one person. That one person is Damian Lillard. I think that is fair enough. I'm not even necessarily criticizing Dame's choices, right? Like, I am saying that in the past, I've covered a lot of these in my time, in 8 seasons around the team. You would hear from the star. You would. Times change. The sort of nature of NBA media has changed a little bit. The era is just a different time, so you don't hear from him. Not that Dame was going to say anything like super interesting or revealing, but he has been such a consistent and solid voice that when you hear his opinion on what's next for the franchise heading into a massively important summer, we would have spent the whole damn show talking Dame. So maybe I'm coming at it from a content creator's perspective, but really the news here is what Cronin said. And Cronin revealed a couple things. He revealed 2 things. I want to talk about them in today's show. One, he talked about the Blazers' core. And when he talked about the Blazers' core, he mentioned Damian Lillard. You would expect him to do so. He mentioned Josh Hart. You would expect him to do so based on trading for Josh Hart and everything he said. There was a story that a friend of the program, Jason Quick, wrote in The Athletic, where Cronin basically said, this team's looking for more Josh Harts. If you're looking for more Josh Harts, you're not going to get rid of the one. You're not going to get rid of the Josh Hart you already have at home. So those names you would expect. Not a surprise that he mentioned Anfernee Simons, but notably he's entering restricted free agency. And not a surprise that he mentioned Jusuf Nurkic, but notably Jusuf Nurkic is entering unrestricted free agency. He also mentioned Nassir Little and Justise Winslow as the team's core. That's the team's core 6 players. That makes total sense. Like, that is not a surprise, right? Those are the Blazers' core 6 players. But what it really indicates is that that's the group they're going to build with. He wouldn't name check Justise Winslow if Justise Winslow was going to be trade fodder. It doesn't mean that Winslow's, an absolute lock not to get traded. When deals come up, things might change, right? But you don't name check Justise Winslow if he's in line to be included down, in a deal down the line. He's part of the Blazers' plan for the future. You don't name check Jusuf Nurkic if there's any chance that you'll let him get away. You also don't shut Nurk down for the season unless you have some sort of handshake deal to give him a long-term, multi-year extension. All of the signs point to Nurk coming back. All of the signs point to Ant coming back. And what it really did was reveal what Joe's plan is, what Cronin's plan is, and what the franchise's plan is. They're going to build around those 6 six gentlemen who they see as sort of a core part of their identity and the core part of who can play moving forward. One thing that Joe Cronin did not do is he didn't really name check any of the young guys. He was, specifically asked about them, and he said he was proud of them, but he didn't drop anyone's name. And he was specifically asked about Trendon Watford, and he talked a little about him, performing well enough to deserve an NBA contract and all those things. But it's not like he name checked Keon Johnson or Greg Brown. Those guys were young parts and in many ways a means to an end. It's a bummer that that's how they were treated this year by the team, but it is what it is. In a normal season, they just wouldn't have played. They wouldn't have been out there to lose. They just wouldn't have played. That's how they would have been a means to an end. They would have played significantly. They would not have played at all, basically. Would have played significantly less. Cronin also mentioned Damian Lillard, Anfernee Simons, Josh Hart, and Jusuf Nurkic as the part of the team's leadership core. If he had any reservations about Jusuf Nurkic potentially signing somewhere else, the Blazers are going to give him what he wants. He's going to be part of the team. And Anfernee Simons was always going to be part of the team just because guys that talented who are restricted free agents, a restricted free agency means the Blazers will be able to match any offer he's given in the open market. They have his bird rights. They can go over the salary cap. There's basically nothing preventing them from bringing Anfernee Simons back. Potentially if someone gives him a max contract, I think that could give the Blazers some pause. But even then, that group's coming back. You see that group. And Cronin mentioned, and I'm quoting here, he said that they want to be as competitive as quickly as possible, and they're supremely confident in their ability to do that. But he also said, we don't need to hit a home run right out of the gates to be competitive, because he thinks those six players, Dame and Josh Hart, Nurk, Nas, and Justise Winslow, he thinks those six players are the beginning shape of a competitive basketball team. I agree with him. Relatively competitive basketball team. I think that's like a fringe playoff 6 right there. You add the right type of parts around them, and then you're getting there, right? Then you're getting close. So how do you get close? How do you get there? Well, the Blazers have some trade exceptions. They've got potentially 2 draft picks. They've got, he talks about maneuvering for cap space. If they don't get rid of Josh Hart and Jusuf Nurkic, they don't really have an avenue towards cap space. So that's a little bit overblown. I mean, they could probably carve out a small amount of cap space, so small amount of money to spend, but not like meaningful money, and not meaningful money to the point where they would do that because they'd have more money if they stay over the cap and use their mid-level exception, and non-taxpayer mid-level exception is going to be their best avenue towards paying someone a bunch of money, as opposed to trying to open up the equivalent in cap space. That's just some cap minutia for you. They're going to be an over the cap team, and they're going to keep those 6 players on the roster. So what do they do? How do they fix this? How do they get better? How do they be competitive right away? Because they're not going to be an extended rebuild. They're not going to be a team that values youth necessarily. Cronin said as much. Veterans help you win more. So how do they do that? Let's talk about that in the second segment. How do they get good? Cronin gave us an outline of how do they get good at his media day press conference where he spoke to the press for 20 minutes. But before we get there, let's talk about Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. I've played Prize Picks. I think if you try it, you will like it too. I use the app. They've got an award-winning app, but you can also go to prizepicks.com if you want to do it. And how it works, if you want to do it, here's how it works. 2 to 5 players. You create an entry between 2 and 5 players in the entry, and you're just picking the over-under based on the projections that Prize Picks sets. So that's points, rebounds, assists, steals. If you don't want to do basketball, you can cross over to other sports, whatever it might be to do cross-sport entries. But I'm a basketball guy. I stick with basketball. You make those picks. You pick against the over-unders. If you win, you get paid. You can get quick, fast, easy, and safe withdrawals. It's just the money's going to come into your bank account quickly, with no concerns. It's a good deal, and it's super easy to make the entries. You can do them under 60 seconds. They're super fast. I've played it a bunch of times on my phone. Just before a game, hey, let's make a Prize Picks entry. Let's get 5 players, pick the over-unders. Super simple, easy way to win. And right now, how about this? If you play as a first-time user today and go to prizepicks.com or use the app to play, and you enter the promo code NBA when you're signing up for your first ever entry, they will give you $50 free into your account, as long as the player on your first entry scores 1 point. So put Karl Anthony Towns on there, put Anthony Edwards on there, put Paul George on there. Those gentlemen are going to score 1 point. You're going to get a free $50 into your account when you use that promo code NBA. That's Prize Picks Daily Fantasy made easy. Today's show is also brought to you by betonline.net. Right now at BetOnline, your Minnesota Timberwolves are favored -130 at the time of record. So if you want to bet on the favorites in the Western Conference play-in game tomorrow, T-Wolves, betonline.net could be the place. If you want to bet on the underdog, you could win some money betting on the Clippers to win a road game and advance to the playoffs as a 7 seed and face the Grizzlies. Do I want to see Clippers Grizzlies? I do. Sounds like a lot of fun. So maybe I'll go to Bet Online and play some money on the Clippers. Bet with my heart and maybe not with my brain necessarily. If you don't want to bet on the NBA, you'll find all the other sports there. Plus, you'll find more lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. So go ahead, take advantage of this today. Go to betonline.net and that's Bet Online, where the game starts. Still a pass for his point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk a little bit about what Joe Cronin gave us a little bit. He gave us an outline. Not necessarily more than an outline of kind of what's to come and what next looks like, but he gave us an outline of from the core 6 he kind of talked about to whatever's next with this group. And whatever's next with this group is draft picks, right? Like, why we're going to talk about the play-in game is because if the Pelicans miss the playoffs, the Blazers are going to be armed with very likely, obviously there's some more to it than that. We'll talk about maybe at some other point, but the basics of it, the Blazers are likely to have 2 lottery picks if the Pelicans miss the playoffs. 2 lottery picks, a $22 million trade exception, the mid-level exception, the biannual exception, a little smaller trade exception, and some obvious needs. The Blazers have a path forward. They want to be competitive. Cronin talks about that they had to, in his opening remarks, that they had to take a step backward to take a step forward, but they want to be competitive right away. They want to be good in the fall. We've been talking about this since before the trade deadline when I thought the Blazers were going to maybe trade for vets to try to thread the needle of being, bad now and good in the fall. They just said, screw it. We'll trade for some vets and shut everyone down. We'll be really bad now, but they want to be good in the fall. That has not changed. They have an interest in being competitive. So what is that going to look like? Well, Cronin talked about a couple things. One, he wants, if they do end up with 2 lottery picks, he wants to maximize the pick. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Said over the next 3 or 4 weeks, he's really going to dive into the draft to figure out what the value of that pick is. And that's not just like, how good are the prospects in the top 10? That is how good, say you get the 9th pick in the draft from the Pelicans. How good are the options at 9 versus how much value could you get if you trade 9 plus some stuff to get better? What is the value of that pick? Is it more valuable to have a good rookie at 9, someone you think, man, Tari Eason's going to change this team? I don't know if Eason's going to be around at 9, but just to throw a name out there for the real heads. Is Tari Eason going to change the direction of this team such that it's worth just going ahead and picking him? Or do we not value that? We don't value a rookie defensive ace from LSU, and veterans help you win. And Cronin said, and I think he said plainly, and I think this is where he started to tip his hand with what the Blazers are going to do. I don't think there's this wasn't like he's... the previous guy, Neil Olshey, was a bit of an oversharer. He would kind of if you got him talking, he maybe would just lay it out in front of you, the openly his plan. I don't think Cronin was doing this. I think he was being honest because he's very measured in the way he speaks. If you watch the press conference, he is thoughtful and measured in the way he speaks. He chooses his words specifically. And what he said was that he didn't want to play both sides saying well, maybe we'll trade the pick if we get, maybe we'll draft a rookie. He said, let's be honest. You are more likely to win with veteran players than young players. So that will definitely be part of our decision-making process. He knows vets help you win and they want to win. If they get the 9th overall pick, they're going to trade it for a vet. Maybe not, because maybe you don't have that, right? Maybe the Jeremy Grant thing never happens. Maybe the other vets that are out there aren't as appealing as the Blazers. That's why you're developing the value, right? Or the sort of getting a sense of what the value is vis-a-vis the trade market and also your evaluation of draft prospects. That Cronin said he's been impressed with the depth, but every GM is going to say they're impressed with the depth. I think that was an honest thing from him, but no GM is going to be like, yeah, after about 6, this draft sucks and we have 7, so we're screwed. Like, it's not going to happen. Certainly not going to happen 2 months before draft night. So, to me, I think you heard it there when he said it. If they end up with 2 lottery picks, he will work to trade the Pelicans lottery pick for a veteran that can help him. Help them win right away. Dame's here, and he wants to be good, and he's going to turn 32 in July. A 19-year-old doesn't help 32-year-old Damian Lillard get the most out of his next 2 years. You could argue that it's a healthier way to approach team building, right? Like you really could. You could argue that it's a healthier way to approach team building. But it's not. You can't argue that a 19-year-old is going to be better than a proven NBA commodity next season. The NBA vets win. Rookies are generally bad. Pretty much even the best rookies are generally bad. That's how it works. Like very few rookies help you win games unless they're in a specific situation that would allow them to do so. So Cronin, he didn't say it, but he said it. If you can read between the lines, and if you're following here on Locked On Blazers, the Blazers will look to shop that pick if they get it. It is an open secret that we've all known, but Cronin said it out. He said the obvious part out loud today, and if you were willing to listen, he confirmed what you think. The Blazers are going to go try to get a veteran. If they end up with 2 lottery picks, they're going to go try to get a veteran with that second pick. But he also mentioned just like what they need and how hard it might be to get there. And I thought he was honest and earnest in this in getting there. Is like he mentioned like the 4 days, the 1 week that the Blazers season was actually fun. February 9th to February 16th, 2022. You recall it well. It was the 4 games leading into the All-Star break. The Blazers made it. After the trade deadline, they won 4 straight games without Damian Lillard. It was Ant and Josh Hart and Justice Winslow and Nurk and CJ Ellaby starting some of those games. And they played the best basketball they had played all season. They were fun. They beat a couple good teams, including Memphis, heading into the break. And it was like, okay, this thing works. And that was all they needed to see. They shut that shit down. Nurk did not play a game for the rest of the year. Anfernee Simons played 4 more games. Josh Hart played something like 6 more games. That was that. Peace out. They weren't going to mess around. They felt like if that wasn't proof of concept, it was proof that they can get somewhere close to it. It was like, hey, this is going to work. Let's go ahead and lose and then figure out how it can work later. And Cronin says, that 4 games, while it's a small sample size, that's kind of what we think we can be. And so what do you have to add to that? Well, you need better defenders and you need more length. He said that basically if you want to be competitive in this league, you got to flirt with a top 10 defense, or you got to convince yourself that the offense is going to be so electric that if you're a top, if you're not a top 10 defense, your offense is so electric and that if you're top 15, you can carry yourself to be competitive. I don't think you can win a title unless you're one of the 10 best defenses in the league, but I think the Blazers could be really freaking good if they're the first or second best offense in the league and like 14th on defense. Like they're going to be awesome. I kind of thought they were going to approach that this year, and boy, was I wrong. I think pretty much everyone in Blazerland was wrong about that as well, except for the real haters out there. Shout out to y'all. The question, and this is a direct quote from Joe Cronin, is what does the supporting cast look like? And that's the question for the offseason. He believes in Ant heavily. They're going to pay Ant a bunch of money. He believes in Dame heavily. I think they're going to give Damian Lillard a $100 million contract extension. I truly believe that is going to happen when the Blazers enter free agency. Those are my guesses. They're going to pay Nurk. So then you're locked into a core. That feels a little bit like the previous regime. Paying Dame, paying Ant, paying Nurk seems like something that the previous regime would do. The question that's going to separate Cronin from the previous regime is what does the supporting cast look like? And he acknowledged it. They got to get bigger. They need more depth up front. They need more and better defenders because the complementary parts, you say, Anfernee Simons is so damn good on offense. Damian Lillard at his peak was one of the 5 best offensive players in the league. Dude is an offensive engine unto himself. You throw those dudes out there with Jusuf Nurkic setting picks, you're going to be great on offense. If you're healthy, you're going to be great on offense. What does the rest of it look like? They believe in Josh Hart. They believe in Nassir Little. They believe in Justice Winslow, but that is not a second round playoff team. Those 6 guys, that's not the core of a second round playoff team. It's the core of a decent team. The rest of the supporting cast is what Cronin will do this summer. And he was open and honest about it. He's going to figure out what the draft pick is worth. He's going to say, these are our 6 guys. How do we complement those 6 guys? Well, you look at those 6 guys, the Blazers need, another center and 2 more forwards. They need size. They need length. They need defenders. They could use a little bit more shooting for my money too, if that's their core with Nas and Justise Winslow. Cronin gave the blueprint. Not a secret. He didn't reveal any secrets, and I don't mean to paint this as like Mike Richmond has uncovered the Rosetta Stone or whatever. Nah, I just listened, and I wanted to relay the big parts, the parts that I heard loudest when I listened. I did not attend a media day, but I did watch it on Trailblazers YouTube. Shout out to TBI, my good friends there. He laid out the blueprint. He gave you the goods. What's coming next? It's a challenge to get from where they are to where they want to be, but they're going to go for it. And if I'll credit with Cronin with anything, the man's got a plan. Is the plan going to work? Probably not. It's hard to build a good team in the NBA, but he has a plan. From the moment he took over, he has executed aggressively a direction of this franchise. And if nothing else, it's good to see someone in charge with a direction that isn't like, we'll be 6th again. The Blazers might end up 6th again. Let's be clear. They might end up 6th again. But the direction isn't, all right, we'll be 6th. All right, we'll be fine. The direction is, let's lose like hell. Let's maximize our chances, and let's go into the summer with a chance to achieve our goal, which is we have to get better around the core we've built. And open and honest about the supporting cast determining the ceiling of the Dame and Ant backcourt. Props to Joe Cronin for being honest. Props to Joe Cronin for being open and with clear about the plan and the direction of the team. I guess now, the next 2 months, 3 months, even 6 before the season starts, we'll see what he does with it. Should be fascinating. But I thought Monday's exit interview gave us a little insight into what's next. All right, to close out the show, it's play-in time, y'all. The Blazers haven't played an important game in a long time, but an important game that impacts the Trailblazers is coming Tuesday night at Target Center in Minnesota. Let's talk about Clippers T-Wolves to close the show because it has an impact on what's going to happen with the Blazers' future and Joe Cronin's blueprint. That is for sure. But before we do that, let me tell you about rockauto.com. It is simply the fastest and, it is the family business that has been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They specialize in helping you, folks who work on your car. If you're someone who is capable of doing that, you can save time and you can save money when you're using rockauto.com. Let me tell you a little story. I needed new windshield wipers in my car. It is we're in wild weather here in Portland. It was 80 degrees on Thursday. It was snowing when I woke up this morning and then pouring down rain all day. And I needed new windshield wipers between Thursday and Monday morning. It was a weekend where I needed to go to windshield wipers. And I did a dumb thing. I went to a chain auto parts store. And guess what? They didn't have it. They did not have what I was looking for. They did not have the windshield wipers that I needed for my 2008 Subaru Outback. Yes, I live in Portland. You guessed that right. But you know who did? rockauto.com. So I went to their website, I found exactly what I needed in a few easy clicks, and I got delivered directly to my door. I could have saved time, and I did save money if I just listened to my own damn ad. So don't make the same mistake I did. Just go to rockauto.com, see all the parts available for your car or truck. And while you're there, make sure you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they will know someone who learned his own lesson, sent you there. It's amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Is play-in time, y'all. The Blazers, the most important game of the last 2 months, 3 months, all year of the Blazers season happens Tuesday night at the Target Center when the Minnesota Timberwolves, your 7th-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves, host the 8th-seeded Los Angeles Clippers. Game's a little early for my taste, 5:30 p.m. But hey, that's what you get for living on this side of the country. You might have to get off work early to watch the games. The winner is the 7th seed in the playoffs. The loser plays Friday in a chance to be the 8th seed. This is big because on Wednesday, You're listening on to Tuesday, April 12th show, but on Wednesday, April 13th, the Pelicans and Spurs will play, and whoever wins that game will play the loser of this Clippers-Wolves game to decide who gets the 8th and final playoff seed. If the Pelicans win that game, if they win Wednesday night and they win Friday, they're in the playoffs, and the Blazers do not get their draft pick. The Blazers will get a 2025 first-round pick from the Milwaukee Bucks that is 1-4 protected. The Bucks, for my money, are probably going to be really stinking good in 2025 unless Giannis Antetokounmpo leaves town. It is way worse for the Blazers in the future of the franchise if they don't get a draft pick from the Pelicans. That blueprint we talked about, the blueprint doesn't really exist with one lottery pick. It does. Like the Blazers will still try to be good and all of those things, but the path gets much more challenging. So this game is huge. It's huge. It's incredibly important for the Blazers. This is an incredibly important game because you want everyone to stay healthy and you want, I guess you want whoever wins, right, to be in the losers bracket, but that's not how it works. But this is going to matter. Whoever loses this game is going to matter. You're going to become immediately a massive fan of this team, unless Seattle's own DeJounte Murray helps y'all out, helps all of Rip City out. Wolves Clippers should be a lot of fun. For my money, let's put it where it's at. For my money, betonline.net has the Wolves as a 2.5 point favorite at home. So, like I said, it's a minus 130 for the Wolves and minus 2.5. That's betonline.net. You can more lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. So you can go make your bet on the Wolves if you want to bet on the favorite. And obviously the reverse of that is where you can make some money betting on the dogs, the Clippers. Paul George is back. The Clippers won 6 of 7 to close the year. It's hard to judge what the Clips are because they just haven't had Paul George because he missed more than half the season. But since he's been back, he's looked really good. They've got Norman Powell back. He's looked pretty darn good since he's been back. They're formidable. Like, this is the core of a team that made the Western Conference Finals last year. It's not the same. It's not like an apples to apples comparison, but this is the core of a group that absolutely got there. You got add Norman, add Robert Covington, and subtract a few guys, and then no Serge Ibaka, and this is, I guess he didn't play in the end of the playoffs, but like this is basically the group that did it. Shout out to Mr. April Reggie Jackson. So the Wolves have been on a tear. Like the Clippers have lost 6 of 7 heading into the play-in round, but the Wolves have just been really good, really good. Early in the year, they were an elite defensive team. They've fallen off a little bit defensively, but the offense has taken a step up. Since the All-Star break, they're 3rd in net rating, according to NBA.com. They've been really good. Their defense has fallen to 13th. They're just an above-average defense. At one point, they were a top defense in the league. They were a top 5 defense in the league for almost 10 weeks of the season. Like, they were really good, and then it kind of fell apart the second half of the year. The defense fell off. For me, the key matchup here is that Karl Anthony Towns, the Wolves center, has a better advantage against Ivica Zubac and Isaiah Hartenstein, the Clippers' 2 centers. As the Wolves' best offensive player, he has a more favorable matchup than Paul George, the Clippers' best offensive player, has against the length of Minnesota's various defenders they could throw at him, including my boy Jared Vanderbilt. McDaniels and Vanderbilt and a little bit of Pat Bev being annoying. You see why they were at one point a pretty darn good defensive team. They've got some length and some athletes out there to get after it. So I think, like, sometimes basketball is as simple as this, right? It's like if your best player has an advantage, you're going to win. I think the T-Wolves' best player has a slightly better advantage than the Clippers' best player. I would lean T-Wolves. What does that mean for Friday's game if the Pelicans win? We'll see, and we'll talk about it on Thursday's show Thursday evening show heading into Friday's show. Like, we will preview all of that if it comes to that. But I think the Wolves are rightly favored. I think there's some money to be made. Maybe betting on the dogs because I think this is a pretty close matchup. Looking at the season series, Paul George missed a bunch of the games, or a couple of games, so like it's not, to me, it's not meaningful. So look at those matchups, but I just think, like, if you're talking about player on player, I think Towns has a better one than PG. So maybe you're hoping that Norman Powell and Reggie Jackson get loose because you can't guard everybody. I think the X factor in this game is absolutely Anthony Edwards for the T-Wolves. When Ant is good, the T-Wolves are basically unbeatable. when he's good and efficient and making shots and being aggressive and getting to the rim and getting to the foul line, they're basically unbeatable. When he's not making shots and he's not being as aggressive attacking the rim, their offense, which can be awesome, is just kind of It's kind of mediocre. When they've had some rough patches, like the defense has taken a real step back for sure, but it's been the lack of elite offense that has lost them games. Anthony Edwards is the X factor for me. If Ant is really good, the Wolves are going to win. If Norman Powell's really good, the Clippers are going to win. So maybe it comes down to two shooting guards, right? But for me, it's Ant. Ant is going to be the swing factor in this game. If Ant, that's big. Ant, who once objected to Anfernee Simons being called Ant, but take it up with Anfernee Simons' mother. That's just where it came from. If Ant is good, the Wolves are going to win. And if Ant isn't as good as he can be, the Clippers have a darn good shot at winning this game. And whoever loses, mind you, Rip City, mind you, Blazers fans, mind you, dear listener, you immediately become a huge fan of them. If the Clippers lose, you're a huge Clippers fan. You better believe. They got 4 Blazers on the roster. Shout out to Rodney Hood and Nico Batum. Like they got some. They got a lot of former Blazers wings, and you can become a big fan of them. If they win though, and they are 7th, you're a big fan of Jake Layman's T-Wolves. It's immediately you become a big fan of Jake Layman's T-Wolves. That's just how it works. Whoever loses this game, you got to get your pennant out and hope they win Friday, because I think the Pelicans are going to beat the Spurs on Wednesday night. That's our show. We got more shows coming this week. We'll preview Pelicans Spurs, a massive game in tomorrow's show. We'll talk a little bit about the rest of the Blazers offseason and what it might look like. It's going to be a bunch of fun. 5 days a week, available wherever you get podcasts. Tell your friends, come back for more. Just search Locked On Blazers wherever you're looking for us, and you will absolutely find us. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.